Welcome to another episode of the Old Paratrooper podcast. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our sponsors, Veterans for Veterans. If you left the military after 1987 and your hearing's taken a knock from your time in the services, click the link in this video. No win, no fee. See if you're eligible.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Old Paratrooper podcast. My name is Mark Ormrod. I am a former Royal Marines Commando, a triple amputee, a father of three, and a business owner, and I am honored and privileged to be here today with Chris.
Thank you very much for joining me, Mark. An absolute pleasure as well to have you on. I've been trying to nail you down for ages to get you on a podcast, and I'm glad we finally got together and got it sorted. So welcome, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Sorry, I've been so elusive. Been here, there, and everywhere the last couple of weeks, a couple of years, all over the place. But it's all good.
No, absolutely, mate. A real pleasure to have you on. I've been following you for some time, way back from when, obviously, 2007, when you got injured. I kind of know Tom Neathway as well. I'm not sure if you've encountered Tom. You more than likely have. And yeah, I find your story just incredible in your mindset, which we'll come on to. But what I like to do to start with is basically get a bit of a background about yourself, whereabouts you're from, where you grew up, and ultimately what led you down the path into the Royal Marines and beyond. So yeah, over to you. Whereabouts you from? Where'd you grow up?
I am from and still remain in Plymouth, in Devon. And the time I decided that I wanted to join the military, I was about 15 and a half years old. And I was coming up to the end of my compulsory education, my GCSEs in the horizon. And I know, parents, teachers had said to me in the months leading up to this, you need to start thinking about what you're going to do. Do you want to go on to college? Do you want a job? And I just ignored them like any dumb 15-year-old does. And I was walking down the school corridor one day and just had this epiphany. And I'm like, do you know what? I do have to think about what I'm going to do. Now, I'm not a particularly academic person. If I apply myself to study, I can study. It's just not a natural, it doesn't draw me in naturally. So while I started thinking about what I wanted to do after school, I kind of knew in my gut that academia wasn't for me. And so I started looking around at all of my options. And where I grew up in Plymouth, all of my mates were 2 or 3 years older than I was. All the people that I went to school with, all the people that I hung out with outside of school, they had already left and taken their individual pathways. Some had gone to college and university, which looked like fun and looked like a giant party to me, but interrupting that party was studying, which I didn't like. And then I looked at some of my other friends who had left and joined the military. And I had one friend in the army, one in the Navy, and at least one, I think, in the Air Force. And I used to hang out with them when they come home on leave while I was still at school. And they always seemed to have money. And, when you're 15, a couple of grand seems like a whole ton of money. It's not really, but it seems that way when you're a kid. And they would always be driving new cars, and they'd always be out partying and having a good time. And they'd always be telling me about these fitness tests that they had, and these guns they got to fire, and these tanks they got to drive, and all this cool stuff. Now, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so a big Arnie Stallone fan and all those boys. And
yeah,
it sounded like they were living the dream, doing what these action heroes are doing in the movies. So I stood there and I'm like, do you know what? I think I'll have a bit of that, and see if I can do what those boys have been doing. At that time, I'd been training and competing in kickboxing and Muay Thai for a little bit. So I was reasonably fit and active for a young man. And so my friend, John, who was in the 2nd Tank Regiment based out in Germany at the time, took me to the career center when he came home on leave. and I spoke to the Army recruiter. The funny thing is, considering that I live in Plymouth, I didn't even know who the Royal Marines were. So I just thought if you want to join the military, you join the Army if you want to be a soldier, right? So he took me down there. We got the paperwork. I brought it home. Because of my age, my parents had to sign it off so I could start the recruitment process. And then my dad told me I had an uncle who was a retired Royal Marine. He wasn't my uncle. He was my nan's sister's husband.
Right.
And he had joined as a Marine, left as a captain, did a full 22 years. And he lived halfway between Plymouth and Exeter in a place called Buckfastleigh. So we went up to see him on a Saturday morning. And I still remember it now. I couldn't tell you how to get to his house because I didn't drive at the time. Obviously, my dad took me up there. But I remember pulling up to the gate of his house. And he lived in like a barn conversion. And this giant Alsatian came bounding up the driveway with a little Jack Russell, desperate to catch up with it and chase him. And there were chickens and roosters and all this walking around, and he had like 4 horses out in the field. It reminded me a little bit of the Arnie movie Commando, living out in the sticks, in nowhere. And we went to his house, and as soon as I walked in the door, there was a big framed citation, a silver sword, and a green beret hanging on the wall. And the citation was his summary of his 22 years in the Royal Marines. The sword was when he commissioned, and the green beret is obviously the green beret. And he sat me down, and we spent a couple hours talking about the Royal Marines and what they do, what they specialize in, what training's like, what life after training is like, and the kind of things you do. And he told me all about his career and what he'd done and experienced. So I went back to the career center on the following week. I think it was the Monday. Spoke to the Royal Marine recruiter, and he put the VHS cassette in the TV video combi, like the recruiting video. And I think my jaw hit the floor. I just remember that they did recruiting videos proper back in the day.
They did. The Royal Marine ones were fucking... I said this yesterday, that the Royal Marines really had a good recruitment video. I'm not going to lie.
Mate, these dudes were fast roping out of helos, assaulting beaches and raiding craft, skiing in Norway, yomping up mountains with massive bargains on. And I'm like, who the hell are these guys? I'd seen some cool Army recruiting videos, but nothing like this. And it was insane. And I just, from that minute, there was nothing else that I wanted to do in my life. I'm like, I need to see if I can do this, because this looks so, in my mind, I'm like, I want to be like Arnie and Rambo, and these are the dudes to turn me into that. So I took the paperwork, got home, got it signed, sent it off, went back to school, did my exams, did pretty well. You could do 10 GCSEs back in the late 90s. I managed to get all 10. I think I got 2 A's, a B, bunch of C's, and a D, which surprised me, really. I have no idea how I pulled that off. But I could have went on to college and could have went on to university, maybe. But I didn't want to. I had zero interest in any of that. Like, all I could think about from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed was the Royal Marines. And this is like 1999, and the internet, dial-up internet had just came in. So I had access to more information. I could do more research and find out more. And it just became like a bit of an obsession, but a healthy obsession. It kept me away from drama and trouble, and just kept me like locked in and focused. And then I got a letter inviting me to do the 3-day potential Royal Marine course at Lympstone. Went up and did that. And that was terrifying because, it was only 3 days away, but I'd never been away from home before. I was so young. It was such a fast pace. I didn't want to be there from the minute I got there, but I stuck it out. Didn't get injured, fortunately. Passed the tests. Came home and they said, look, just wait. We'll send you another letter, and that letter will invite you to start recruit training as a member of whatever troop at whatever time. And so I went home with my kit list and my training program, stuck to it religiously, trained every day, never did any more, never did any less than the program told me. started collecting my sewing kit and my boot polish and all this kind of good stuff. And then the letter eventually came, inviting me to start recruit training in February 2001.
You see, so how old were you then? 2001, 18?
17.
17. So similar age to me when I joined in. I think people don't give it enough credit. Obviously, the training for Royal Marines Parachute Regiment is renowned for being hard training, but the daunting bit as well at 17, stepping away from your comfort zone and your friends, all you've ever known. I think that part alone, that's difficult, isn't it? It's really hard.
Like where I grew up, right? It's a place, it's got an odd name, a place in Plymouth called Penny Come Quick, right?
All right.
where my bedroom is, or in my childhood home, I could lay in bed, I could look out the window, and 200 meters as the crow flies was the train station. So you could always hear the tannoy and all this lot throughout my whole childhood. And then all of a sudden, I found myself stood on the platform with this huge bag. I couldn't fit my boots in, so I tied the laces up and flopped them over the bag. And I was staring back at my bedroom window. And all I wanted to do was go back into that house and get into my bed. And I was shitting my pants. I had to get on this train without mummy and daddy holding my hand, go to this place, and I knew I was going to get my ass kicked for at least a year of this ridiculous training. And I was terrified. And I got on the train, and it's only 45 minutes from my place to Exeter, but we picked up a couple of blokes on the way, all looking as ridiculous as me with these really big bags they couldn't pack and boots hanging around their neck. And it was terrifying. And that first 2 weeks where you're all in a room together, 60 plus of you, I just wanted to go home like every day. I just thought I'll get on the train, I'll be back home in an hour. I could be done and I could do something more comfortable. I'll get a job in McDonald's or something. I don't know, whatever. I just don't know if I can do this or if I want to do this. But I think that's perfectly natural for your age, like you said. And that's the thing that I think is overlooked.
Yeah.
It's just dealing with that at a young age is enough to turn most people off.
And it does as well. You probably saw that through training, the amount of people that got homesick and left.
Yeah.
We had few. I'm similar to you. I was 97 when I joined, so late 90s again. And you saw them. People that just got in their heads.
Yeah.
You just had to kind of switch off and crack on with what was going. But it was horrible. The homesickness feeling was, everyone had it. If you didn't, I think would you say that being 17, you found it more difficult than perhaps someone that's 22, 23? Because you would have gone through training with people in their early 20s as well. You had them older ones, didn't you?
Yeah. And those boys helped me through a lot. I think they recognized that I was still a baby. And I mean, I struggle with everything.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I never failed anything. I got through training in the first hit, but it felt like I just scraped everything. And those boys helped me to scrape everything. I was very average. I was never the fittest, the fastest, the strongest, the smartest, the best soldier, none of that. But I just had this ability to keep going. And there was part of me, like I didn't have a plan B. Honestly, I didn't know what I would do if I didn't pass training. And no one had taught me this at the time, but I just had this natural ability. Have you been to Limpston before?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so we've got our own like dedicated train station, like a platform, and it's right on the bottom field where the assault course is. And I somehow could feel the feeling of being sat on that train if I'd quit. And the minute I felt those wheels start to move, the just regret I would have felt from quitting. And so every time I got close, I could just kind of close my eyes and feel that. And it made me feel sick. And I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm ever getting on that train unless it's with a green lid on my head. And, like I said, I had a lot of help, a lot of support, just managed to scrape my way through everything. And I broke it down as well, in my mind, like 32 weeks is a long time. And it's overwhelming. But I used to break stuff down into like months, weeks, and sometimes days, and sometimes even individual periods throughout the day. Like if you have 8 hours of, bottom field, classroom sessions, weapons training, I'd just take 1 hour at a time and just be like, get me through this hour and I'll move on to the next one. Break me. And that's how I just, when it got tough, I was just like, get me through this next hour and I'm good. And we just go through it that way.
Yeah, it is, and it's a good way of doing it and breaking it down. But that what you touched on there is saying that regret. And how many people would you have come from? I've met loads of people that went for the Royal Marines, loads of people that went for the Parachute Regiment, and other units as well, that didn't succeed because they quit. Some injuries, sometimes it can't be helped, medical discharges, and that it is what it is. But there are a lot of people, and there's a lot of the time there's an excuse. I've met some people that are genuine, saying it wasn't for me, I couldn't do it. But that regret they have for the rest of their life. And someone said the same to me, Mark, like, if you don't do this, you'll look back and regret it and ask the question, what if? And I think they're right. And you must have encountered loads of people that went through training that didn't make it and probably have that regret. And you know, when you pass, you become part of a very, very small and elite club that you've got bragging rights for the rest of your life, and a brotherhood that continues to probably support you and be part of even now after years of being out. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? You could have all the money in the world, but you can't, technically you can buy a green beret, anyone can buy one, or a maroon one. But when you earn it, that's part of your legacy, and no one can ever take that from you, ever. Do you know what I mean? And you can't replicate what that feeling is like and what that means. And it's probably one of the greatest honors of my life to just say I'm part of that brotherhood, and you know, and as a personal development thing, to know that I was able to do that, no matter how messy and scrappy it was getting through training. You know, I did it. And like you say, hundreds of thousands did it. And when because I was so young and I was still a boy and I was still learning, in my mind, what it meant to be a tough guy at that point was, you know, the jacked guys covered in tattoos, you know, with the noses where they've been in loads of fights and all that. And as I saw those kind of blokes drop out, you know, when I saw them quit when they got wet for a couple of days and they hadn't eaten, or they're losing their temper because it's hard and they don't like it. When I saw them guys quit, my whole mindset shifted. And I'm like, okay, that's not what it means to be tough. It looks like it, they look tough. And yeah, maybe they can scrap and fight for a couple of minutes or whatever. But the resilience and the mindset of just being miserable and being able, not only just to keep going, but to remain professional and keep your standards high when everything is shit, is what it means. And on top of that, to laugh about it. To be able to laugh, just look around at your mates, you know, and they look like a sack of shit, and you haven't showered for 6 days, and everyone's just like miserable, cam cream's like a mess, and just look around at the state of all these idiots that you're sat with and just burst out laughing, because that's all you can do. Are you going to cry? That's what it was. That's my mindset changed. I'm like, this is what like being tough is about. It's resilience.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think that's where the brotherhood forms. Like-minded individuals, you've all been through the same shit. You've all passed the same training. So you relate, you know, you relate to those individuals. And they were miserable times, weren't they? Come on, you can't, the cold, and you know, it always makes me laugh when, obviously I joined the fire service after a long time after it, but we'd go out on jobs with the fire service and be out for 4 hours, and you'd be a bit cold and wet, and people would be asking for reliefs. And I'd be like, what the fuck is this about? You know, when you've been in the field for 2 weeks or, you know, 10 days, cold, wet, February, TESX, you'll remember those sort of it's different level, isn't it?
It is. And outside of the military, most of the time, like that scenario you're talking about, like you're probably the same as me. My mindset is always, I'm going to have a warm shower in a couple of hours, nice meal, get in my nice warm bed. You don't do that when you're in the field. I've got 2 weeks left of this shit. This is horrible.
Yeah.
You know, it's different.
Yeah, 100%. So you've got through training. We've established training, you know, didn't come easy. And I think that's quite a regular thing. There's very few people that I've had on the podcast or talked to in my personal life that will go, "Oh, I found Royal Marine training or parachute regiment training easy." Most will admit that it's hard. You get that odd weirdo that was like, "Oh, I really enjoyed it," and you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay,"
Yeah.
some sort of lunatic. But I think most people kind of find it difficult. We've established that. So you've passed through training first time, which is a feat in itself. You've ended up. Which commander did you end up going to?
30 Commando was my first unit.
Right.
Did a little bit of time at CTC before the MPGS was a thing, then down at Poole for a couple of months. And then my first actual unit was Royal Marines headquarters here in Plymouth.
All right. Okay. How come? Was that? Is that a normal kind of route to go down, or?
No, there is no normal route. They just put you wherever they need you. Someone looks at a bit of paper, says we need a couple of bodies there. You don't get much choice, especially when you're the sprog and you've just passed out of training. You just go where they tell you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like for you, joining in the late 90s and up to the early 2000s, it's coming into probably one of the busiest periods that the British Army had seen in a long, long time. Certainly, sort of pre-Falklands. I know, obviously, the 80s and 90s. You got the Northern Ireland tours that you'd have probably gone on. Did you go on any Northern Ireland tours?
I missed the very last one.
Right.
In 2000, at the end of 2001, beginning of 2002, I think.
Right. Okay. Because I remember the Marines relieved us on one of the Northern Ireland tours in the early 2000s, I believe. But you've come into this period of time. Iraq's kicking off. Afghanistan's starting to kind of smolder. 9/11's happened, and it's changed the dynamics moving forward. So, what was your first real tour that you went on where you were like, "Fucking hell"?
Well, the first tour I went on was Telic 1 in Iraq in 2003, but it wasn't fucking hell. I found it very boring.
Right.
And I didn't fire a single round in 3.5 months. I saw minimal action. I even volunteered as a QRF for an army medical regiment so I could get attached to ambulances and things as force protection, thinking, oh, this is where I'm going to see stuff, and still nothing. The lads from 4-2 were going up, taking the palace and the oil fields and all that kind of stuff. We stayed down in Azerbaijan naval base. And I just remember thinking, because when you're going through training, it's probably the same P company. All the instructors are telling you how great you are and you're the best at this, the best at that. Everyone thinks you're great. So you go to combat and you think, okay, cool, I'm going to get to put all this stuff in action. And then I'm just like, when's the action? I'm not doing anything. I'm running around, tooled up, ready to do stuff, but nothing's really happening, at least for me anyway. So I spent 3.5 months out there. I didn't do anything really. So I was a little bit disillusioned with it all. I was glad I went out there. I managed to fit a lot into the first 5 years of my career with Iraq, Norway, and all this other stuff. But yeah, it wasn't kinetic at all for me. But then, that's what I thought combat was then. That being said, what was terrifying was sitting in a trench in cat-free Romeo NBC suits with missiles going over your head, landing around you, and not knowing whether your lungs are going to start burning, your skin's going to start peeling off. Just staring at your mate through the eyelets in your respirator, waiting for them to start convulsing. That was pretty terrifying. But, I didn't have a firefight at all. Didn't do anything really war-y as such. But I got some experience, so that was cool.
Yeah, I think I heard the same about the Iraq stuff. I'd left by then and I were out working out there on the close protection scene. But I did hear that from a lot of guys that went out to Iraq. It was not, I don't want to say anti-climax, because I think some guys did go out there and saw bits and bobs.
Yeah.
It kind of, I don't think it kind of materialized like it was expected or people were briefed it was going to be. And I wonder, moving forward to the Afghan tours, I wonder if people had that same mindset with the Afghan tours and just thought, well, it's probably going to be nothing. And then obviously 2006, 2007 and onwards, it turned into a fucking proper conflict. So I'm going to fast forward. your first Afghanistan tour, was that in 2007?
It was, yeah, Herrick 7.
So talk us through the start of that tour and, you know, kind of the events that sort of led up to you know, on Christmas Eve 2007. How was the tour and how did you adapt to it, you know, being out there compared to what, you know, the Iraq tour?
Yeah. So I had the feeling from the pre-deployment training that it was going to be different, because the pre-deployment training for Afghan was very different to Iraq. It felt a lot more intentional and aggressive and focused. And so I kind of had this gut feeling that when you hit the ground in Afghan, the bullets are going to be flying. And they were. You know, I flew into Bastion on the 7th of September, 2007. Spent a couple of days zeroing my weapon, running training serials, that kind of stuff. Got thrown on the back of a Chinook. I can't remember the exact date, maybe like the 12th or something. And then flown out to Forward Operator Base Robinson down in Helmand. Now, again, I expected this Chinook to land, me to go running off the back because I was like the first one off and running into like a hail of bullets. But once the sandstorm had cleared, some bloke with one of those big handlebar mustaches, no shirt on, just looking like a sack of shit, came out the dust and was like, "Right, lads, follow me." Just walked us into the compound, showed us where we were living, what our Sangha responsibilities were, that kind of stuff. And then just kind of let us get into a routine and start running things for a day or two until we needed to go out on the ground and start conducting foot patrols and that kind of stuff. So, oh Christ, it was different. It was different. The energy was different. The feeling was different. And then when we started going out and patrolling, it was very, very different. And this was what I thought combat was like. Now, as the kind of tour progressed, you know, there wasn't a single minute of the day where you had not that you didn't have a break, you had breaks, but you couldn't relax. Attacks could come at any time of the day or night. And you had to kind of be ready for it. And so to a degree, I mean, you get a little bit used to it, but to a degree, you're always in that bit of a heightened state of adrenaline, just kind of waiting. But it was good. I just remember feeling like this is what I wanted to be doing, you know. And when that first bullet comes towards you, I don't know why or how, but it didn't terrify me like I thought it might. I don't know if that's to do all the training or what, but I just kind of felt like not that not that I was supposed to be there or it was natural. I just felt okay. I'm like, okay, cool, here we go. First firefight, let's go. And then they just came thick and fast after that. Firefights, mortars, rockets. When we were out on patrols, conducting operations, or, you know, I had a firefight at like 3 o'clock in the morning in my underwear once. Just crashed out of my pit from the fob, ran down to the Sangha, new lad down there on his own. I got a little bit, I mean, he knew what he was doing. He was great, but I got a little bit like alpha male, shoved him out the way, got on the GPMG, I went, I want to go. But yeah, just crazy. But that's what I joined for. That's what I remember feeling. This is what I joined the military for, to do this stuff. And to do this kind of soldiering. So yeah.
That's the kind of thing, you know, and I don't think people will understand, because I've spoken to many people, veterans of Afghanistan conflicts, and they are, again, a lot will say it's the best time they had in the military, which is weird perhaps for some civilians or people that have never been there or in that environment to kind of get the head round, because like they said, it was a simpler time. You just went out, you don't have to worry about anything else other than what your job is. And you're doing exactly what you trained for, what you wanted to do. The reason you joined in the first place is to be an elite soldier, go out there and do what you're trained to do. And you're doing it. You're kind of living weirdly living the dream that you wanted to do, isn't it?
Yeah. And what's great about it is that you look around at the lads that you're with and you have so much confidence in them. Like, you don't feel unsafe. because you know these guys are so high level and courageous and professional that no matter what shit comes your way, they got your back. And that is a hard feeling to replicate anywhere in the world, to know that people have got your back that much, and you just feel so confident because of it. And you know, you've got their back too, right? And you're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure they get back to their families safely as well. So it's very unique in that sense. And I'm a big, I'm a nerd. I'm a personal development nerd. I like to always push myself to grow as an individual for myself. And that environment was like a breeding ground for that, you know, constantly trying to volunteer myself for positions of leadership, trying to very subtly take charge of things, not, you know, I want to do this, let's do this. Just like, I'll tidy up the living space, and hopefully guys will see that. It sets an example. They tidy up the living space. I'm looking after my kit and equipment the right way, and hopefully some lads will see that, and then they'll start. I'm just trying to be a leader, trying to develop myself to be a better soldier, to be a better human being. And that environment for me was perfect for doing that.
You want
Because
to test yourself, don't you? You want to test yourself. I think it's human nature, or certainly with a lot of individuals, to want to be able to test yourself and want to you push yourself. I'm a big believer in pushing yourself out your comfort zones.
yes,
Um, like you say, you push yourself out your comfort zone. You learn a lot about yourself. You can't learn about yourself from just staying norm and staying in your comfort zone. You have to put yourself out there, and then you figure out what works for you. You know, you go push yourself. You go, actually, I didn't like that. I didn't thrive in that situation. Probably not for me. But unless you do it, you don't fucking know, do you?
no, and there's a lot of situations in a place like that where you're out your comfort zone. Whether it is, you know, being put into a position of responsibility to lead other men, or you're in a firefight, or you're evacuating a casualty for real, not in a training scenario, and you have to step up. And you know, I don't want to get too negative either, um, but you do see some people that buckle in those scenarios, and I'm not judging them at all. Um, but some do. Some realize in those moments, actually, this isn't for me, and that's cool. That's fine. They've still all earned their place. It's just a reality check, I think.
Yeah, that does happen, and you're right. And you know, it's a difficult one. You see it all the time, but I think I think that is also a leadership quality as well, to stand there and go, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm
Yes.
not very good at it. I don't feel comfortable. And I think people will have a lot more respect than people that are in these positions. You would have seen it countless times in all the professions I've done over the years, where people are bluffing the case as leaders
Yeah.
when they shouldn't be there. And that, I find that dangerous. You'd have a lot
Yes.
more respect for that person to turn around and go, it's not for me. I'm out of my comfort zone here. I'm well above my station. Sadly, people don't like to admit that, do they?
No, but you're right. 100% respect for people that have got the humility to go, do you know what? I don't feel capable here. Can we get someone who's more confident and more able than I am? And that's the kind of, I sound like I'm bragging then, but I was going to say that's the kind of thing that I would do.
Yeah.
If I thought it would put other men's lives in danger, I'd step back and go, listen, boss, I'm not confident in this. I don't want to do this because it's dangerous. And I'd step back.
Yeah. And which is the right thing to do. And like I say, it's a leadership quality. And sadly, but that's missing a lot of the time. And I always say that the ability to take advice as well is a great leadership quality, because I've met so many people along the way that because you're junior, they won't accept advice from you. And
Yeah.
that really, really annoys me,
Yeah.
because that is as bad as being incompetent in my book. Because
Yeah.
just because you're junior doesn't mean you may have not seen something, or you've sensed something, or you're not as good a soldier. Does that make sense as well? You know what I mean?
I think some leaders get leadership confused, and they think that it means that they've got to know everything, do everything, be the best at everything. You know, I had very limited experience with leadership in the military. It would have been one of the greatest honors of my life to climb the ranks and to lead. And I think if I did, if I was a boss, I would look at the men that I was working with and go, right, that guy's much better at navigating than I am. Smudge, Whenever we're going out, you're navigating. I want to learn from you. Dave, you're much better on this weapon system than I am. So you're going to teach the lads. I want to sit in with the lads and I want you to teach me, and it's just common sense. Take the best guys that you've got that are the best at this, and then they run with it. And then you have the humility to learn from them. You don't just go, right, I'm in charge, I'm going to nav, and then get everyone lost and pissed off. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no, I suck at nav, so you do it. You're way better than I am. And I'll do, I think a leader's job, depending on the scenario, is to almost detach and see the whole picture and move the chess pieces. You know what I mean? You've got to take your ego out of the equation and go, I don't have to be the best at all this stuff, but my boys are the best. So I'm going to let them shine and thrive. And that's why, as a collective, we're going to be the best.
Yeah. Leadership's so simple on paper. Like you've just explained it there. That, what you've explained there, is so simple. Highlight people's strengths, use them to the best of their advantage to create a really good team. Sadly, it's gotten so wrong all the time. And I have seen it again, probably most prominently in the fire service. Leadership is bad in the fire service, but there we go. Yeah, it is one of those things. Sadly, it's dead simple, but it's gotten so wrong. So, Christmas Eve, 2007.
Yep.
Take us there. What do you remember before kind of everything changed? Now, I know you've talked about this, obviously countless amount of times. I'm hoping that you feel comfortable talking about it because the amount of times you've talked about it, and obviously, but at any point, buddy, if there's nothing you don't want to talk about, I fully understand. But
yeah, no, I'm good, man. I'm good. So we were going out on another foot patrol, routine foot patrol. The funny thing about this is we kind of been confined to the fob for a couple of days. Our manpower dwindled. A couple of guys got injured. One of them fell off a truck, like not combat injuries, just silly things. So we didn't have enough blokes to go out on the ground and keep conducting these foot patrols. So when we had a bit of a boost in manpower, we immediately got briefed up on a foot patrol, but we didn't have a mission or an objective. It was basically 2 sections of blokes go out the back gate, go for a bimble, and then come in the front gate. Just because you're always being watched and observed by the enemy. And when there's a bit of a disruption to your pattern of movement and your pattern of life, they look at it as an opportunity to strike. So we knew we had to get out on the ground. We'd been stuck in there for about 3 or 4 days. But just to get boots on the ground, no real mission. I was second in command of the section that went north. And when we were about 5 hours into this patrol, we were getting close to finishing up. We'd left the back gate, we were at the front gate. We were on high ground. The other section, just beneath where we were was Fob Rob, and then beneath that was the other section. So we were going to give them overwatch so they could peel back in the camp, get behind the Heskel barrier, and then return the favor. And obviously, as you know, when you go firm on a foot patrol, you want to get behind a building or a wall or a rock or a tree or a shrub or something to give you cover from view and cover from fire. But because we were on high ground on like a ridge line, we didn't have any of those options. And then to my front, there was like a shallow bowl in the ground. And I thought, okay, if we get in here, get on our bellies, anyone that's looking up at us is going to have a hard time seeing us, which means they're going to have a hard time trying to kill us. So it was really stupid when I look back at it, but I was so young and stupid. But I thought if we jump in this shallow bowl, and that's the best protection that I can give these guys. So I jumped in. My half of the section jumped in after me. Corporal Helsby took his half of the section, started giving them fire positions. And then when the lads that I was with were in their fire positions and they were happy, I started walking over towards the position that I selected for myself. And as I went to get onto my stomach, I put my right knee on the floor and knelt on and detonated an improvised explosive device. Fuck. Yeah, looking back, it was a dumb decision. But I didn't know much about enemy tactics or strategies back then. Obviously, with the limited options to take cover, they look at that and go, this is probably where they're going to go. Yeah. So we're going to stick a bunch of landmines in there. Had I thought that way back then, I would have absolutely avoided anything like that. But, I was 23, maybe 24, still, not a very experienced soldier, especially tactically in that environment. And it cost me. I ended up kneeling on and detonating an improvised explosive device. It tore off both my legs and my right arm instantly. So we were working with some American Special Forces guys, and one of the things that they were doing was in an IED strike, they would go in, clear the area, write a report, and make sure that it was kind of sterile and no one else went there. And I read the report that they wrote, and this shallow bow was now 12 feet deep by 15 feet around. There were 6 other IEDs that were uncovered from the sand when the blast went off. They were anti-personnel mines with the warhead of a 107mm Chinese rocket on top.
Fuck.
So it's a bit of a bang. And I remember laying there. It's a very surreal experience. I think your body is a phenomenal bit of kit. The way that its natural pain relief mechanisms and coping mechanisms. And I remember just being there, and it felt like a dream, and I wasn't in a lot of pain. It was like a really intense pins and needles feeling. Like you could never replicate it. It was so intense and numb and uncomfortable. But I remember laying there thinking on one hand, there's no way I'm ever getting out of here. Like, this is the worst possible scenario to evacuate a casualty from. Like, we're on high ground in a 12 foot by 15 foot crater, surrounded by the IEDs. And I just need to hope that the other guys in my section don't freeze, don't panic, and they do what they're supposed to do. But in the back of my mind, I legitimately never thought I was going to die. Even though I was pissing out with blood and claret and everything was just pouring out, I had so much confidence that they would do what they needed to do that I knew they wouldn't let me die. And the reason that I survived is because of their bravery, their professionalism, and their courage. Like, no one froze, no one panicked. Everyone just kicked straight in. I had a 19-year-old on his belly with a bayonet prodding the ground, marking left and right, a safe route for the medic. I had a guy straight on the radio, giving off a 9-liner, calling in the Kazivac for me. I had a guy coordinating all around defense in case there was a small arm attack. I had a guy close to me just talking and talking and talking, keeping me conscious because I was fading in and out because of the blood loss. And they just did everything perfectly. And because they did that, the medic got to me very, very quickly, shot me with some morphine, put some tourniquets on me, scooped up. My right leg was still sort of attached, and so was my arm. My left leg was completely gone. They scooped up what was left, stuck it on my stomach, dragged me out this minefield, took me off the high ground, got me to the low ground, threw me in the back of a vehicle. The vehicle then started driving back towards camp to the HLS. As it was going up the incline to go in the front gate of camp, the medic fell out the back. I fell out the back. The driver span round, grabbed the femur bone poking out my right leg to hold me in the vehicle. Left the medic because the other section that we left with were at the bottom of the hill, so he was fine, he was safe. Got me to the HLS, and the last thing I remember is the Chinook coming down, the sandstorm it creates from the propeller blades, and then the heat of the exhaust beating down on me. And that was when I passed out and later found out that I had been declared clinically dead.
Wow. That is insane. So you were conscious up until that point?
Up until that point, yeah. Yeah.
That is just bonkers. And like you say, maybe that's the adrenaline or the soldier in you, because I hear countless stories of this again where people are injured severely, and it's not until they're at a place of not safety, but like the job's done, that they kind of then relax, or they let it go, and then they go, either they pass away, sadly. That happened with Corporal Mark Wright from Kajaki and stuff, or like yourself, you've just gone unconscious. So you were clinically dead and had to be resuscitated on the back of the Chinook.
Yes. Yeah.
Due to, I assume, catastrophic blood loss, is that?
Yeah. So when they put me on the back of the Chinook, I had no pulse, or they couldn't feel one. They couldn't get any intravenous lines into me because my veins had collapsed because of the blood loss. And they put an oxygen mask on me, which should have steamed up if I was breathing, but it didn't. So they kind of shoved me to the side and said, this guy's gone. There was another guy injured in the blast who had shrapnel in his back and in his triceps. So they were working on him. And then when the medics walked past me to get some equipment to go back and work on the other guy, they said my eyes started to flutter, which meant that my heart was beating. So some of the medics out were spare, came over and got to work on me. And 3 days before I was injured, someone in the army medical world had green lighted this new technique to be used, where if you can't get intravenous lines into somebody's veins, you can drill into their tibia and their fibia. But I didn't have any because they'd been picked off in IED. So these two medics, Charlie and Millsy, completely cuffed it and made up this procedure on the spot. And this is something I don't always emphasize. I kind of skim over this part, but you've got to bear in mind they're in the back of a Chinook helicopter. There's sand and dust everywhere. Their adrenaline has peaked. The pilot is banking from left to right because at that point, like the platinum standard for the enemy was to shoot down a helo. So they're always avoiding fire from AKs, RPGs, and everything from the ground. This is not a sterile hospital room where everything's a bit calmer. This is chaos. And so they came over and out of lack of choice, I think, decided to drill into my hip bone. They took these medical drills and drilled in the front and the back of my hip bone to put intravenous lines in. And the first time they said it failed because my skin was too loose. So they pulled out, tightened the skin, went back in. They said within 3 minutes, once the fluid was in, I was awake and responsive and then coherently answering the questions that they were asking me. I don't remember any of this, but yeah, they said I was awake and answering their questions like it was no big deal. I don't remember any of that, though.
I find that stuff just incredible, and I think a lot was learned from the sort of trauma medics and stuff that we're doing all these kind of cutting edge techniques on the front line, that it's been brought back into kind of hospitals and stuff now, hasn't it, and stuff, because and again, I don't think enough credit goes to the kind of medics out there and stuff that they do. And obviously when you're talking about it, you obviously owe a lot to these guys, to just thinking outside the box under extreme pressure and trying new things, which could go catastrophically wrong, because look, we know the military don't support people. And if they take a chance and get it wrong, there's the opportunity that they could be arrested, because that shit happens as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the thing. I say this all the time to people. We've all got our strengths or weaknesses, right? Our job is to go out and to fight the enemy, and maybe people from the medical world wouldn't thrive in that environment, but I certainly wouldn't thrive in their environment. Like, what they do is unbelievable, and I couldn't do it. I'm a pussy. Like, I see blood and I get all queasy. I don't have the intelligence, I don't think, to be a medic, or the courage to be a medic. And what they do is phenomenal, and they save lives. And you think about it logically. I got blown up and I had to live through that, and it's tragic. The guys in my section saw that, and that's tragic. But these medics see it every single day in, day out, catastrophic injuries. Like, sadly, not everyone makes it. So, and they've got to deal with that, figure out a way mentally. How do you get those images out of your mind? And so Charlie, she told me that I was the only casualty. I was the most catastrophic thing she'd ever seen. And I was the only casualty. She did 6 back-to-back tours. I'm the only one whose name she knows, because after me, she went, I don't want to know anyone's name. That was one of her ways of coping. And she was awarded with the medical world's equivalent of a Victoria Cross. I think it's called the Florence Nightingale Award, because of what she did out there and all the procedures and everything you just said that got advanced medically because of her and her teams. But I don't know how they deal with that. They're incredible. How the mental, the things they see, like, and they saw all the time is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only saving grace or the way that they deal with it would be because they don't know you personally. I think that's
Yeah.
probably a little bit of it. I mean, and that's probably why it's a little bit difficult for the guys in your team and for you as well, seeing because you're such a close knit team and
Mm.
work together, trained to the highest standard, that the impact of what happened to you would have had a massive impact on your mates
Yeah.
because you're that close. Whereas a medic, and I'm not trying to play it down, I'm just trying to say that how they maybe cope with it is
Mm.
they don't know you personally. You're just a human, aren't you, to them? And that's probably the best way to deal with it, to stop you struggling with your mental health and not knowing your names, because then it becomes personal, doesn't it?
Yeah. You have to do it. Yeah. It's a skill, but you have to just, I imagine, look at this casualty and go, just another day in the office. I've just got to deal with this and move on to the next one, because they were so busy and so overworked that you can't get emotionally involved with these casualties, and one of the reasons that I live my life the way that I do now is in case any of them are struggling, like, and I'll probably never see them again in my life, right? And I've had people come up to me. I met someone, I was speaking at a conference in the NEC last week. It was a disability conference, and one of the nurses from rehab bumped, I don't remember her, but she came up and introduced herself to me and told me about the struggles that she had when I was first in hospital and in rehab. And I said to her, the reason I live my life the way I do, so publicly as well on social media and stuff, is so that if people like you, 20 odd years later, are questioning yourselves, did I do the right thing saving that guy? How bad it, I want you to see that we're out here living. We're out there creating businesses, growing our families, earning an income, being productive members of society, still trying to be of service to the world. You definitely did the right thing, and thank you for doing it, you know?
Yeah, that's a great thing and a great way to look at it, Mark. To be fair,
Mm.
because again, it's easy to get and in your circumstance. Obviously, I've never been in your circumstances, and we'll probably come on to it. But I should imagine it's quite easy to get wrapped up and feel sorry for yourself because of what's happened. Obviously, that's human nature. You've gone through a catastrophic thing, and you're gonna feel sort of depressed. You're gonna have struggle with your mental health, but the fact that you've come through that and realized the impact that it's had on others, I think is a reflection of your character. You're thinking about other people and selflessly thinking about other people as well when you've got these injuries and stuff and recovery. So yeah, I think that's an amazing thing, pal, to be fair. And it's nice to hear you say that. Um, when was the point that, because I'm obviously big on mental health. It's a big thing at the minute with the veterans community, as you well know. When was the point that it actually kind of hit you that your life had changed kind of forever?
So when I was in hospital, I did 6 weeks in hospital, and about 3.5 weeks into my stay, I had a visit from a doctor who, he wasn't part of my team, and I didn't recognize him, but he was the UK's leading medical professional in the field of amputations. And he literally, this is January or February 2008. And he walked in my room, and he had been working in that world for 33 years, and just non-emotionally told me that I've got zero chance of walking because he'd never met anyone with just one leg missing above the knee that had success with prosthetics because of how hard they were to use, and then just turned around and walked out. And that
Right.
hit me. That was like a steel toe cap to the balls. And when you're in hospital and you've got tubes up your nose and your ears, catheters, you got these suction pads pulling all the dirt and sand out your wounds, you got all this medication that you're on, and your sleep cycle's messed up. You find yourself like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, like wide awake with nothing else to do but think and lay in your pit. And I spent a little while thinking about what he had said to me. And it's the only time in my life when I've contemplated suicide, because I was 24 and I'm like, And now this expert has told me I'm in a wheelchair for life, and I'm going to have people pushing me and washing me and feeding me. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I was a 6'2", 16 stone Royal Marine running around in Afghanistan. I'm 24. I've got like 60 plus years of my life living as a disabled adult, and I don't want to do that. So it sent me to a bit of a dark place. But yeah, one thing I say for military humor, as dark as it gets, is it can pull you out of those dark places. Because I remember being awake at like 2, 3 in the morning one day, and I was kind of running through my head. Like, I don't know anything about suicide, and I'm like, well, how do you do it? And I was running all these scenarios through my head, and please don't think I make light of this. It's just the reality of what happened. But I just kind of chuckled to myself because I thought, well, I can't even cut my own wrists. I've only got one hand. I can't do it. And then I kind of chuckled and I was like, right, fuck this shit. Like, stop thinking this way. And then I don't know if it's fate or what, but a couple of days later, I got a visit from a guy who was blown up in Iraq, who had both his legs missing above the knees. He just walked in to come visit me. And then I'm like, holy shit, this dude's walking around on prosthetics. So this guy the other day told me I have no chance because even people with one leg can't do it. This guy's got 2 legs missing. He's doing it. So I can do it. And then I just completely disregarded that doctor because I'd physically seen in my own eyes somebody with a similar level of injuries walking. So I'm like, right, get me out of this hospital, get me to rehab, give me the legs, get out of my way. Let's go. And that was it. Like from that moment, like everything was just full steam ahead, setting goals, trying to figure stuff out. It was hard because I was the first triple amputee from the conflict. I think I was the first one to survive since maybe the First or Second World War. But anyone that I'd met, either online or had come to visit me, was in a wheelchair. And because I had this option of prosthetics, I didn't want to be in a wheelchair. I wanted to be a full-time prosthetic user. So that was my entire focus. Like, give me the legs, teach me how to use them, get out of my way. But because I had no mentor, no one could teach me and mentor me because they hadn't been through it before. It was a bit of a slog, and it was frustrating, and everything was slower than I knew it was supposed to be because most people didn't know what to do with me, and they were trying to protect me. They didn't want me to hurt myself because I'm just like, right, come on, let's go, let's do this, let's do that. And they were, I'm not going to say they were holding me back. They weren't. They were protecting me from myself, I think. But they didn't really know me. I wasn't like a bull in a china shop being reckless. I was just keen to get out there and make as much progress as I could. But it was a slog in the beginning.
Just a driven individual, but like the same driven individual that pushed himself through Royal Marine training, that was your mindset, and that's part of you, and again your character, and without that mindset you probably wouldn't be sat here now talking to me and doing all the incredible stuff that you're doing. And it just kind of hits home as well, like that guy wore something really, really small, and whether that guy realised it or not, with the double amputee that walked into your hospital room, how much of an impact he had on your life and your recovery, and what it sounds like that individual had that impact, and now it kind of reflects in you how you go and do the stuff that you do. Would that be correct to say? Because then you've seen it firsthand, the impact it's had on you, and now do you try and give that back in, being a public figure, coming on podcasts, doing talks? Is that part of it to inspire others?
Absolutely. And in the beginning, in rehab, so Mick, he turned up at my hospital room unannounced, and it was just lucky that I was in the mental headspace to be ready for that. After I was injured, more and more triple amputees started coming through the system. And in the beginning, I was a little bit excited. Not excited is the wrong word, but I went.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
I went to go up and visit them, and then I'm like, oh, hang on, dickhead. You might be the last person they want to see. You might go busting in their room, like all arrogant, thinking, "Look what I'm doing. You could do this too." And then you send them on a spiral. So I would just always be ready at the end of the phone that when I got the call, can you come up to Birmingham? Can you come see this guy? Then I'll hop in the car and I'll go. And now, like you said, on a bigger scale now, through social media, podcasts, whatever it is I'm doing. Just living the way that I live, taking time out to answer everyone's DMs. And it's been a massive part of my life. It's consumed a huge part of my life because I feel a responsibility when people DM me about this kind of stuff to answer them and try and support them a little bit. And not just people that are injured. You know, I get tons of people when it comes to mental health, like messaging me saying, you know, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. What do you advise? Can you help? And I do what I can. You know, we could all probably do a little bit more, but I've got 3 kids, multiple businesses, and just trying to squeeze it all in and you know, do as much as possible, which is why, you know, my focus now is on massively growing my social media to reach as many of those people as I can, and just kind of spread some positive messages and, you know, for what it's worth, give some advice and share my experiences.
No, 100%, buddy. And my hat's off to you. I think it's incredible that you do that kind of stuff, and it's needed. You know, Afghanistan now is slowly getting forgotten about, but you know, with guys, it's partly the reason I do the podcast, get guys, so it doesn't get forgotten. The sacrifices that are made, and you know, for people like yourself that are life changing injuries, and for the ones that never made it home, they need to be remembered by future generations. You know, so yeah, it doesn't get forgotten.
Yeah.
So moving forward, yeah, talk to me about obviously, you know, recovery and what you've gone on to achieve. I'd like to talk to you about Kaizen Summit. Obviously that we're both part of. You more than me. I'm kind of new addition to doing bits with it. But yeah, the stuff you did with Invictus, books, everything you've done kind of after and your recovery, buddy. So
Yeah, I mean, there's always opportunity in adversity if you look for it hard enough, and it opens up doors. And if you're willing to walk through those doors or roll through them if you're in a wheelchair, um, then there's good things on the other side. And you know, there was an abundance of opportunity for me, from the minute I went to rehab right through to now. So I wrote my first book in 2009 when I was in rehab, with a ghostwriter. Never ever thought, you know, with 10 GCSEs and a fetish for eating crayons that I'd ever write a book. But it happened. I've got another couple in the works right now. I spent 10 years, you know, when I was discharged from the military, I did a couple of those like interviews on the phone where they ask you qualifications and interests, and they told me to be a laborer on a building site, um, which was great. It was annoying in the beginning, but great then because I was like, okay, I need to really think about this. Like, what assets do I have at my disposal that I can turn into a career? That led into like motivational speaking, um, growing a social media following. Uh, you know, the Invictus Games came along later on when I decided to introduce sport into my recovery. And I was very, very much against adaptive sports for about 10 years. I thought it was very demeaning and patronizing in the beginning. I realized after that I was very wrong about that. Um, and now, yeah, like I said, running multiple businesses. We got Kaizen Summit. That's a leadership consultancy, which is ran by veterans and men and women from the emergency services. We teach a 12-step leadership program to corporates. We have a membership site now, a subscription site, which anyone can join, and we upload videos. It's a culmination of all of our instructors' knowledge from the military, from the fire brigade, from the police, from the ambulance service, at every rank level. We teach everything from, you know, fat loss to uh, developing a growth mindset. And we're uploading more and more courses all the time. We mentor. We have a mentorship program. So our instructors, like I said, all from those elite backgrounds, mentor people either in the civilian capacity, as in B2C, business to customer, or B2B in the corporate world, with the junior to mid-level managers, and just more and more opportunities come up all the time. It's really cool what you can build and create. And this day and age, it's never been better. I've literally got 4 fingers and a thumb, and I can run multiple businesses and do multiple things. One of my goals is, so I spent about 10 plus years really focused on raising money for military charities, doing all sorts of these endurance events, runs, swims, hand cycles, pulling trucks, and all these things. And I massively neglected my own income and my own business interests and life. So I've really locked in on that now. And that's what my main focus is now. And I want to stand on a stage one day in the not too distant future, given like an interview or a keynote. And I want to use that opportunity to plug a book that I'm writing. And the book's going to be called 4 Fingers, One Thumb on a Smartphone. And it's going to talk about how I scaled like a massive business empire as a dumbass with 10 GCSEs from the Royal Marines who never even became a Lance Corporal with a smartphone and just an idea. And I've started the process of doing that. Social media is going to be a big, big part of that, but so is Kaizen Summit, so is the membership site. It's exciting because all of it is working and all of it is firing, but all of it just needs scaling. And that's all it is now. It's just scaling all of these things to a massive level. And the beauty of it is, this is like where you feel like you've uncovered some sort of secret code, is that you create businesses which help people and make you tons of money. Like, it's the magic formula. I'm not a snake oil salesman. I'm not selling you shit or, gumph. We're creating stuff from tons of people's incredible and unique experiences and teaching it to other people. This is in the Kaizen Summit world, and creating a business for it. A business that is run and staffed by veterans. It just wins on so many levels. And I love it. I love it. The way that it's doing so many positive things, but also helping me towards my goals and the rest of the team towards their goals. It's awesome. I love it. And
It's a win-win. It's like you say, it's like a win-win, isn't it? You're kind of, I don't think people, you can't be naive enough to think that, money makes the world go round. We do stuff to create money and support our family and our loved ones. We have to do that. We all do that. But there's no reason why you can't have a balance and do both. You can help other people. You can be a genuine individual, and you can create a business at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that, is there?
No, but then, if you manage to generate a ridiculous amount of money, look at all the good you can do with it. So
True.
I've just come back this weekend. I was at the Arnold Schwarzenegger fitness show up in the NEC. I go up there every year with a military charity that I'm a trustee of called Reorg. And I've thought this for a couple of years now when I've run up there. They book out like 3 of these massive halls, and there's vendor stands and there's talks on stages and there's entertainment and all that. And I thought, imagine if you had like this big thing called like Vet Fest, where you did it for veterans and they showcased their businesses and veterans supported veterans businesses. And there's something that magic happens when you're in an immersed environment. So you'd have all these people that might be struggling with stuff, and they happen to have a random conversation with someone, and all of a sudden, boom, they find the help and the support that they need. And you have your big names like your Foxies and or whatever doing keynote talks, and they might open up opportunities for someone that maybe wants to be an explorer or get on TV, and you connect them, and there's networking. And then you have the charities as well, and the charities are showcasing what they can do to help. And maybe, the wife of someone who was sadly KIA is 10, 100 miles away. She's not at the event, but someone is there that knows her, and they find out something that can help her and a network she can get into. And it's just crazy. Like, you can reinvest that money and to do other good shit with it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And networking and being surrounding yourself by good people is beneficial to everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said there. Like, my goal, very, very similar to yourself, is if you can create a platform. I'm a big believer in you can do a lot with it. If you've got a platform, if you've got a following, you can help. There's a lot of causes out there. I've got a few friends at the minute where their partners are suffering, military veterans partners are suffering, or they're suffering with cancer and stuff. And if you've got that platform to be able to generate revenue through charity through events, showcases and stuff. You've just
Mm.
got a platform to help people. And this is
Yep.
what social media should be used for. I'm a big believer in social media has got its place. It's got a lot of negatives, but it can really, really be used
Mm.
for positive stuff. And it's good to see people like yourself, the adversity that you faced throughout your life and obviously your career and being injured in Afghanistan, but now using that sort of experience to really channel and help other people. Again, it's just, and I don't want to use the word inspiring because it is a bit, but it is
No.
inspiring. I sit here now like talking to you like literally like fucking hell. And I always try and say, Mark, I take stuff away from every single podcast, and everyone has their days when they're feeling a bit off and they're fit down. And then when I come on to talk to someone like you with your mindset, I go, fucking hell, yeah, I've got, you know, when I do have my days, and hopefully other people will see this as well and go, fucking hell, if he can do what he does and
Mm.
with that positive kind of mindset that he's got, do you know what I mean with that?
Yeah. And, I like what you said about the platforms and social media. I think we have a responsibility when you get a platform to, no, it's not a responsibility to do good, but you should take it seriously
Bit
because
of duty of care, really. You know what I mean? It's
duty of care, yeah, correct. And this is a little bit off topic, but I think there are a lot of young men out there now that are a bit lost and confused.
very much so.
I watched that Louis Theroux documentary the other day, and I'm just
Killed
like,
me off, Mark.
these blokes have got these big platforms, and they're just teaching young men to be morons. And I'm not saying everyone from the military is perfect at all, but when you go through Royal Marines training, you go through P Company, you know, you develop levels of resilience and fitness, and you go through these experiences when you deploy and you develop discipline and all these positive characteristics that I think young men need. And they don't seem to have any positive role models. So if we can grow these platforms and we can maybe be a positive role model for young men that are a bit lost, a bit struggling, I'm not saying, not like some crazy, stupid recruiting thing for the military. You don't have to join the military, but just the values and the basics, be disciplined, get up early, treat people right, help where you can, you know, lift weights, be strong, be healthy, live to your potential, save your money, be disciplined, all these kind of things. The bigger your platform gets, the more positive impact you can have if you use it responsibly.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And the big takeaway is like just be nice to people, help
Mm.
people, be nice.
Yeah.
And I think we all fall foul of that at some point when you've got it on you, but as a rule, I try and be nice to everyone and help people because you don't know what they're going through on the inside.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a big thing. But look, Mark, an absolute pleasure chatting to you, genuinely. I know we're kind of in touch a little bit with Kaizen and stuff like that. And hopefully we'll get to do a few more bits together, and hopefully we can do some bits and promote various different things. But I'll have a quick chat with you in a minute off air. But
Yep.
thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into kind of your life, your mindset, your recovery, and kind of how you're inspiring people on a day-to-day basis. I think it's incredible, buddy. And please keep doing what you're doing. I think it's incredible.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
No dramas, buddy.